Focus Black Oklahoma is sponsored by the Black Church Traditions and African American Faith Life program at Phillips Seminary, with an online art showcase of a sacred commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Online at wherefaithleads.com/art.
This is Focus Black Oklahoma. I'm Kuma Roberts.
And I'm Colby Webster.
Because more Black and brown communities across the state still remain unvaccinated, experts are concerned about deep impacts as we approach a fall COVID surge that will only increase disparity for many. Carlos Moreno has details.
As COVID-19 cases continue to rise this fall, Black and Latino communities are among the least vaccinated and at the highest risk. In an August 6th press conference held by the Oklahoma Legislative Black Caucus, State Representative Jason Lowe indicated that only 68,000 Black Oklahomans are fully vaccinated, fewer than any other ethnic group. Representative Lowe and State Senator George Young pointed out that Black Americans are 3 times more likely to be hospitalized and 2 times more likely to die from COVID. Florida Pope, Director of the Oklahoma State Department of Minority Health and Health Equity, shared information about outreach and health resources for those who may not have access to vaccinations in their communities.
It was, again, from CDC, and it's going to be addressing disparities across Oklahoma. And it's mainly going to focus on underserved, racial, ethnic, and rural populations. And so we are going to put an initiative together through the Office of Minority Health to where we're going to offer funding opportunities through a competitive mini grants so that community-based organizations can have access. So the plan is to put about $6 million into community-based organizations, $3 million to faith-based organizations to be able to access this money for the work that they're doing. And then another $3 million is going to go through the tribal. And then we have to, according to CDC, we had to carve out over $12 million to the rural area. There are a lot of outreach efforts going on throughout the state of Oklahoma to be able to get the vaccines to those populations. And we're seeing, of course, that surge continue. We don't want it to be our family. We don't want it to be us. And we've had town hall with Black physicians and minority physicians, minority women physicians, because we realize physicians are a trusted entity for us. The other trusted area for the Black and brown population is the churches and the pastors.
Oklahoma Eagle writer and online editor Fred Jones Jr. maintains a section on the publication's website about current COVID-19 information. He is optimistic that more information, as well as the desire to get back to a normal life, will lead to an increase in vaccinations in the Black community.
We got football games and, the basketball season will be starting right up. Holidays are becoming. The normalization of those seasons is going to be, level for people that are vaccinated, but people that aren't. What if you couldn't go into Walmart without being on the CDC list of vaccination, situations like that. But, we have to, those of us that have received the vaccine kind of think about, we don't want to subject ourselves to, second round being infected or whatever. The Delta variant and the vaccine. I got the Moderna, so it's supposed to really, really help you fight off the second variant. But, you just never know. So, the best way to, not be infected is to not be around people who are susceptible to infection themselves.
In Tulsa's Latino community, marketing and public relations professional Margarita Vega Trevino is far less optimistic. While she notes that most of her peers are vaccinated, cultural and religious customs among some Latinos in Tulsa are seen as more important than wearing masks and getting vaccinated.
For example, if you go to the tiny Mexican restaurants on the east side, the very small businesses, you'll see people shaking hands, not using a mask, that kind of situation is pretty prevalent. A lot of people just keep going about their business and being social, and that's really frustrating. But I think regardless of that, a lot of people have been vaccinated, which is really great.
On August 18th, Pope Francis strongly encouraged Catholics to get vaccinated with approved COVID-19 vaccines, calling it an act of love. Mrs. Trevino hopes that this message might change the minds of those in her family who may have been hesitant to get vaccinated. The fight for mask mandates in Oklahoma has become fiercely political, with schools caught in the middle. Tulsa Health Department Executive Director Bruce Dart said in an emergency Tulsa City Council meeting on August 16th to discuss a possible citywide mask mandate that schools are, quote, one of our definite hotspots, unquote, in transmission of the virus. On September 1st, an Oklahoma County judge granted a temporary injunction putting Senate Bill 658, a state law banning mask mandates in schools, on hold. This decision was made in part because the restrictions on mask mandates did not apply to private schools and is therefore unconstitutional, putting students in public schools at risk while allowing private schools to put protective measures in place for students and teachers. This comes on the heels of a federal investigation launched by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. In a letter dated August 30th, directed to Oklahoma State Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister, the office indicated that Oklahoma is in violation of federal law by preventing school districts in the state from considering or meeting the needs of students with disabilities as a result of Oklahoma's policy that prohibits school districts and individual schools from requiring the use of face masks. Hoffmeister has indicated in tweets and official statements that her office intends to fully cooperate with the Department of Education's investigation. I spoke with two students at Phoenix Rising Alternative School in Tulsa to find out their concerns.
So that's my worry. How do we actually know if it's actually effective? And most people who actually get the vaccine, sometimes they also get sick off of it. So that's mainly my worry.
So, because when I got my vaccine, I didn't get no symptoms. I didn't feel sick. All I had was muscle spasms and hurts. I haven't had any symptoms or nothing, so I wouldn't say that's a worry for me.
Oklahoma State Medical Association President Mary Clark, MD, issued a statement reminding Oklahomans that, quote, for each infected student, there is a risk of additional infections among their friends, family, and the community. We must all do our part to keep the community safe, unquote. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Carlos Moreno in Tulsa.
Oklahoma has a surprising connection to the war in Afghanistan. Yet, amidst the devastation, one organization fights for opportunities for women to help liberate one another. Nick Alexandrov has the story.
That sound, a B-1 bomber thundering over an Afghan village, became common 20 years ago.
We launched the war in early October 2001. It was October 7th.
Sonali Kolhatkar is a journalist and activist, a long-term advocate for Afghan women.
And very soon, the U.S., through its air war, killed as many Afghans, if not more, as Al-Qaeda killed in the United States. So if the U.S. was seeking revenge, life for life, it got it, but it paid for it with the lives of people who had nothing to do with those attacks.
Like the 23 civilians, most of them young children, killed when U.S. planes hit their village, Thori, on October 21st that year, or residents of the community that was erased. Here's journalist Amy Goodman reading an article by Richard Lloyd Perry on Democracy Now! In December 2001.
It was a large village with a small graveyard. But now that has been reversed. The cemetery on the hill contains 40 freshly dug graves, unmarked and identical, and the village of Kama Adu has ceased to exist.
The elimination of Kama Adu, the ruin brought to Thori, this was, in a sense, the work of Oklahoma technicians. There was a group here in the early 2000s called the Center for Aircraft and Systems Support Infrastructure, or CASI. It brought together engineers from the University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State University, and the University of Tulsa. And at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City, this coalition maintained and repaired aging aircraft, like the B-1 bomber. That plane had a distinct reputation before Afghanistan. Waste, boondoggle, albatross, these were some common terms thrown at the aircraft. But Operation Enduring Freedom, the official name for the intervention I've been describing, silenced the critics. Because the B-1 was one of that operation's lead actors. In the preceding years, CASI had improved the aircraft's turnaround cycle by a factor of 7 to 1. That meant the aircraft could run sorties or bombing raids more frequently. For officials like Dr. Thomas L. Landers, CASI's director in 2002, and now the AT&T chair and dean at the University of Oklahoma's Gallagly College of Engineering, The B-1's continual presence in Afghan skies signaled Cassie's success. In just the first week of the air war, for example, B-1s dropped 50 CBU-87 cluster bombs, each containing 10,100 bomblets. Sonali describes the consequences of this barrage.
These cluster bombs would disperse small containers that looked like a soda can that would be flung out over these fields all across Afghanistan and picked up by little children who had their hands blown off and their feet blown off.
B-1s proceeded to fly 4 sorties a day in the following weeks. They fired hundreds of guided missiles and dropped, by some accounts, most of the tonnage on Afghans in the process. In Chowkar Karez, bombing and gunfire killed as many as 35 civilians. One 20-year-old woman, Mushfika, had fled 40 miles to that village from the city of Kandahar, but there was no refuge. She witnessed the shooting of her mother and brother, the death of her uncle in a bomb blast. Hundreds of thousands of Afghan women endured similar nightmares, according to the Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan, or RAWA.
One of the slogans of the US NATO in 2001 was liberating Afghan women. But in fact, helping Afghan women was never part of the agenda.
RAWA operates underground in Afghanistan and from refugee camps in Pakistan. I interviewed them via email, then hired a Pakistani narrator to read their responses. They describe themselves as
an independent political social organization of Afghan women fighting for human rights and for social justice in Afghanistan.
And they emphasize that
the prime victims of the war were women. Of the around 200,000 civilians killed in the past 2 decades, women bore the most burden of this disaster. Right now, there are 700,000 war widows living under harsh conditions. Women are subject to discrimination and violence on everyday basis.
Sonali agrees, pointing to the Afghan warlords the U.S. allied with 20 years ago.
The U.S. embraced the Northern Alliance, the former jihadis, the mujahideen warriors that the CIA had armed to fight the Soviets. You're not going to have any kind of women's rights era coming up in Afghanistan if you're going to embrace the ideological brethren of the Taliban in the government. Within the last 10 years, there was this horrifying trend. Afghan women were so depressed with society, with their lives, with what they were facing. They were burning themselves to death. It was a trend. Hospital burn units couldn't keep up. This was happening as part of the U.S. occupation.
One solution, Sonali and Rawa agree, is not the withdrawal of U.S. forces alone. It's reparations. And that's just one of many links between U.S. foreign and domestic policy I'll explore next month in part 2 of this series. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Nick Alexandrov at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City.
Now, some headlines from across the state.
According to the FBI's recently released annual hate crime statistics report, bias against African Americans overwhelmingly comprised the largest category of reported hate crime offenses pertaining to race, with a total of 56% of those crimes motivated by anti-Black or African American bias. Asians have also been targeted during the COVID-19 pandemic amid online and political rhetoric stigmatizing them. The data showed that attacks targeting Black people rose from 2,755 from 1,930, and the number targeting Asians jumped to 274 from 161.
The Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board voted 3-1 on September 13th to recommend a commutation for death row inmate Julius Jones. The decision moves the high-profile death penalty case to its final phase before the governor. Governor Kevin Stitt must now decide whether to grant, deny, or amend the board's recommendation. 41-year-old Jones has spent half of his life on death row while maintaining he is innocent. In 1999, at 19 years old, Jones was arrested for the murder of Paul Scott Howell, a father of 2 and well-known businessman in the Oklahoma City suburb of Edmond. Howell, 45, was fatally shot in the driveway of his parents' home after returning from a shopping trip with his sister and 2 young daughters.
Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt held a ceremonial signing on September 10th for 9 anti-abortion bills. Stitt said on Twitter, quote, "I promised Oklahomans I would sign every piece of pro-life legislation that came across my desk." End quote. The bills were initially signed between April and May. The ceremony occurred as abortion rights became a central issue after the near-total abortion ban in Texas went into effect in early September. Senate Bill 918 would restore Oklahoma's authority to prohibit abortion if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, the landmark Supreme Court ruling which guaranteed women a constitutional right to abortion. House Bill 2441 prohibits abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected, except if the mother's life is in danger. House Bill 1102 adds the performance of an abortion as, quote, unprofessional conduct, end quote, except for cases where the mother's life is at risk or she risks physical impairment.
As COVID-19 inundates emergency rooms and intensive care units, the strains on the hospital systems are manifesting in a myriad of ways that aren't limited to COVID-19 patients. Hillcrest Hospital South in Tulsa has brought in a temporary trailer morgue. Comanche County Memorial Hospital in Lawton and Stillwater Medical Center have medical tents outside in the parking lots. And 14 unvaccinated COVID patients at McAllister Regional Health Center exhausted its ventilator capacity, requiring its ethics committee to decide which COVID patients wouldn't have access to a ventilator in the event that one or more of 9 other COVID patients deteriorated.
Oklahoma's law preventing schools from mandating masks is temporarily on hold due to State Supreme Court Judge Natalie Mai, who said she will issue a temporary injunction that blocks the law because it applies only to public schools. Schools adopting a mask mandate must offer parents the ability to opt out.
The Biden administration is beginning the clemency process for certain inmates released to home confinement due to the coronavirus pandemic. The process will start with a review of nonviolent drug offenders on CARES Act home confinement with 4 years or less to serve. This has been made possible by a provision of that federal stimulus law signed by President Donald Trump last year that expanded the group of inmates eligible for early release.
The rise in people using and getting sick from ivermectin, an anti-parasitic drug usually reserved for deworming horses or livestock, as a treatment or preventative for COVID-19, has become so frequent that this month the Food and Drug Administration released a statement imploring Americans to stay away from the drug. Ivermectin is not an FDA-approved treatment for COVID-19.
A Seminole Nation tribe elder and freedman descendant, Lena Jo Hunt Shaw, nicknamed Bonnie, passed away recently. She was a community advocate who fought for the rights of freedmen in Oklahoma, having spent 2 decades on the Seminole Nation Tribal Council and many more decades organizing and working with the freedmen community. Freedmen were the often black or mixed slaves of the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Muskogee Creek, and Seminole Nation. A series of treaties in 1866 between the tribes and the U.S. government ensured full citizenship and recognition of rights for the black freedmen and their descendants. Today, freedmen descendants of the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma continue to face segregation within their own community. Bonnie Shaw passed away at 85 on September 2nd.
After 15 years, Oklahoma's First Americans Museum is now open. Construction stopped on the project in 2012 and didn't resume for 7 years due to a shortage in federal and state funds. In 2019, the Chickasaw Nation and the city of Oklahoma City struck a deal to continue construction. The museum includes the history of 39 tribes that today call Oklahoma home, but also includes an upscale modern native eatery and bar, a 100-plus seat theater for movies, concerts, and receptions, and a gift shop with native products and exclusive artwork by Oklahoma artists.
An Oklahoma man, Benjamin Scott Berlew, 41 of Miami, was arrested for his role in assaulting a photographer during the chaos of the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol building. The 90-second incident was captured on video and was posted on Instagram. The FBI stated that the tip came from, quote, a group of internet sleuths, unquote, who used social media, YouTube videos, and other online content to assist in the identification of suspects.
The country's largest Confederate statue, and the last one standing on Richmond, Virginia's Monument Avenue, was removed earlier this month. The Robert E. Lee statue weighs more than 12 tons and was lifted off its granite pedestal in one piece. The 40-foot pedestal will remain in place for now, with its final destination to be determined by a community-driven event to reimagine what's next for the space.
The NFL has added a second female official to its officiating roster for 2021. Maya Chaka is making history in her own right as the first black woman to officiate games in the league. Chaka spent 7 years in the NFL's officiating development program. Although 2021 marks her first NFL regular season assignments, Chaka has already officiated 4 preseason games.
You're listening to Focus Black Oklahoma. Now we follow the challenges facing citizens of Haiti after political unrest and natural disasters recently struck the island, and stories from Haitian refugees who have settled in Oklahoma. Jamie Glisson has more.
That's Hugens Gustenar. He immigrated to Oklahoma from Haiti a couple years ago to be with his now wife, Kelly. Hugens is full of life, showing me how he likes to DJ the Afrobeats music he would listen to back home. I asked him to tell me a little about where he grew up.
I was growing up in Rankit, a small town in the north of Haiti. I spent a lot of time with my grandfather. He had several gardens, so we went together every morning when I'm not in school. He always taught me how to be a grown man, how we can plant food together. We had everything, mangoes, cassava, everything. He kept honey from the bees, so I always do the smoke for him. That's the way that he could get the honey from the bees. So all the kids went to the garden, different garden, and have fresh mangoes, to eat. It's always a good time because even if you don't have food home, you're always happy because you have mangoes, you can eat several to help you not feeling really hungry anymore.
While Haiti is the most mountainous country in the Caribbean and has beautiful beaches, it is plagued with corruption, crime, and conspiracy. On July 7th, 2021, Haitian President Jovenel Moïse was assassinated in his home by a group of professional killers and foreign mercenaries masquerading as agents of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Within hours of the attack, Haitian police had a shootout with 6 of the suspected gunmen, fatally wounding 4 of them. Since then, more than 40 suspects have been placed in custody. The interim Prime Minister, Claude Joseph, immediately called for an international investigation and pledged that the elections scheduled for later this year will go on. The late President Moïse had nominated a new Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, the day before his murder, and within 2 weeks, Henry took over. As chaos and anxiety prevailed among the Haitian people, many believed that Henry's takeover is not legitimate or constitutional. Henry has declared his main goal is to hold elections later this year and has said that he is in talks with political parties and civil leaders to appoint a new electoral board and draft a new constitution that will be presented to voters for approval. Amidst the chaos following the presidential assassination, on August 14, 2021, a magnitude 7.2 earthquake struck the southern region of Haiti, as it is still dealing with the fallout from an earthquake in 2010 that killed an estimated 300,000 people. This latest disaster further fueled the political instability and gang activity that torments the island. Johnson Deschamps is a research scholar and physician at the University of Kentucky. He grew up in the same village as Hugens, and currently Johnson is here in the United States on a 1-year student visa. Hugens and I called him to discuss the current situation in their homeland. Here is Hugens greeting Johnson in French Creole. We discussed the current issues and the plans that Prime Minister Henry has for Haiti, as well as all of the acute problems they are facing. First, Johnson weighs in on the upcoming elections, then Hugens.
You cannot go into election without taking care of those. If everybody cannot go out and vote freely, there's not going to be a democratic election. That is a big concern about how many people who might get a chance to vote. Will this election be legitimate? If less than 20% of the population go to vote, there's no way that election could be held with this current situation. If it happens, we're going to jump to more crisis in the country.
They are still failing because they can't keep the Haitian people safe. As Johnson said, if we have election, it will be more catastrophic. People don't have food, they don't have house, how are you gonna ask those people, to go out and vote? People don't believe in those leaders. They don't care about the Haitian people. They just care about having more money. Haiti doesn't need someone who has a lot of beautiful speech. Haiti needs someone who can say yes to the Haitian people and say no to the corruptions and has a good plan, so a good leadership to lead the country for a better future.
Haiti, whose population is almost entirely descended from enslaved Africans, won independence from France in 1804. Over time, however, colonialism, economic, political, and social difficulties, as well as numerous natural disasters, have left Haiti with chronic poverty, governmental instability, and corruption. Even when it seems the odds are stacked against them, the Haitian people have hopes for a bright and prosperous future. As our conversations came to a close, I asked Johnson to share his dreams for Haiti.
We still believe, because we are the beacon of freedom for this world, for all Black people in this world. Because right after we became independent, all slaves understood the word freedom, what it means. And it was a threat for the whole world that little Haiti free slaves. The biggest country in the world did not forgive us for this act. We tend to forget our history because Haiti has been a country who faced so much difficulties. One day we'll come back strongly. And our dream is when we come back proudly, we can run the sovereignty of our country and have a better country and being a respectful country and be able to help ourselves because we have the resources to take care of ourselves. I hope that Haiti one day will have a non-corrupt government who know how to build that country and make that country a better country where all Haitians can go back to Haiti and live with dignity and respect.
At the beginning of this story, Huggins shared memories of his childhood growing up in the village of Ranquit and how the children would visit different gardens to eat fresh mangoes. He said that even when there wasn't food at home, they were still happy because there were always mangoes. Since Huggins has been in Oklahoma for a couple of years now, I asked him if he has found his mango.
Yes, in Tulsa I have found the sweetest mango, my wife.
Mwen souhaite ujwen tu bagay bien. Haiti, I wish you all the best. For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Jamie Glisson in Tulsa.
That's remind me Haiti all the time. I don't know if you like the vibe. As you know, this is you guys on the mic.
Coming up, contributor Judy Williams clears the air about what it's like working in various aspects of the cannabis industry in the third and final segment of Blacks and Cannabis.
In the final installment of our Cannabis in Black Oklahoma series, we speak with two different cannabis industry insiders. First, we meet Paul Wynn, cannabis entrepreneur. Paul shares with us his story and some of the often unseen facets of the industry, as well as what he thinks cannabis will ultimately become in society. At one of his properties in Tulsa, Paul sat down and gave us a behind-the-scenes peek at a few aspects of the business. First, he shares how he got started in the cannabis industry.
Basically, my main business that I do is real estate investing. So that's what I've done for like 20 years. What happened was one of my childhood friends had called me and asked me if I could find him a place to rent for a indoor grow. I basically just kind of approached him and asked him if he wanted to do it together.
After a year of planning, Paul and his business partner opened their grow facility in Northeast Oklahoma. Paul goes on to explain the moving parts of this industry.
A grower's life it's very different. Like they spend countless hours just really watching the plants, just looking and making sure that they're all getting what they need. With that being automated, there's always a risk of clogged lines, or there's little things that are out of the grower's control. Like the master grower, that's what he's getting paid to do, is not the actual work as far as trimming and foliation and all the planting and potting and transferring, all that kind of stuff. They always have like an assistant that does all that.
Paul talked about the importance of regulation and how there's even a person whose job it is to make sure they stay in compliance.
There is people that their main job is to, foliate, and that's all they do. And then there's trimmers that come in and all they do is to trim the bud. And then there's processors and packagers, the product. And then there's the sales team too. So then the sales together. It's a lot more involved than just growing a plant as far as the business goes. There's a lot to it.
Cannabis is a versatile plant. There are varying levels of product quality, and that determines what ends up in the finished product. This can be a tedious and laborious process.
It's not easy just to make the product, to grow it. I mean, a lot of people feel that, oh man, it's just simple to grow, and it's not like growing a rose, The growing part, everybody thinks it's all glamorous and stuff because you grow marijuana, but it's nothing like that. It's down and dirty and gritty like farming. I mean, so you got to think of it like that, but people don't associate that. They always associate being a grower something, oh man, that's so cool. It's so much work.
Jasmine Harvey is a cannabis educator, artist, photographer, and operations manager for Oklahoma-based cannabis lifestyle magazine and TV channel Herbage. Jasmine grew up around cannabis, but it was still considered taboo. A turning point came when she discovered the healing effects on her mental health.
I've already battled with a lot of depression, anxiety from losing my father, losing my grandmother, losing a lot of people that was very close to me, and then just navigating life with being bullied all through elementary school, being bullied all through middle school. I had a lot of mental health issues that were not addressed, just for the simple fact it's in the Black community, and you buck up and you just carry on. You don't sit there and you're like, hey, I might need some help with my mental state. And I was like, that's unheard of. Like, we're strong individuals. We don't do that.
Jasmine discusses destigmatization and education in her own family and community.
My mother has her med card now, and I've been able to push her in that direction of breaking that stigma so she knows exactly how it works medicinally with your body and everything. And she's like, my daughter told me. It's because I'm sitting here and I'm here to educate. We educate, then we medicate. But if you don't want to medicate, I'm going to educate you still, A lot of it, of course, within the Black community, it has been highlighted as the crutch for the Black community. It's been that stigma since, and it's breaking away from that. But you also have to be within your own community, within your Black community. You have to be like, hey, we want to be seen as better than what we have been portrayed. So that's us going in the forefront and giving everyone that education instead of just sitting there like, oh, I smoke weed. It's like, no, go out there and educate your people.
Harvey is the operations manager of Herbage Magazine, a cannabis lifestyle magazine that covers everything that is embodied with cannabis.
From my brand alone, my J. Harvey Portrait Studio, I am a photographer, but I'm also a cannabis photographer. So I get to see a lot of the products I'll shoot or the flower in which they are being grown at, the facility in which it's being grown at. I'll be able to have the insight of going in the back and it's like, oh, so that's how you produce our flower. So on that front, I have a lot of insight from that. I've worked in dispensaries, so I know what's in the back end of things. I see all of the brands out there and seeing what they offer and how they offer it to the patients and how they are also actively breaking that stigma and giving that patient education. We also follow a lot of patient journeys, again, and that's where it's at. It's like getting to the heart of the patients, listening and presenting those stories in a beautiful manner. We're here to give that platform for those who do not have it, especially when there is Facebook, Instagram, all of that adds a lot of censorship. We're here to be uncensored. I am trying to curate more so of getting our voices out there within Herbage Magazine as well.
Jasmine is energized by the positive changes she sees in the industry.
I'm excited about how the industry is evolving, because it's not evolving for the worse, it's evolving for the better. We're 3 years young, guys. Like, we have our hiccups. Of course, there are a lot of legalities in there that are a lot of hiccups, but we also are very strong. Again, it passed because of the community. 788 passed because of the community. So we know what we want and we go for it, and we try to go for it in a legitimized manner to make sure that we're good. And again, we're cutting out all that negativity that surrounds cannabis.
Jasmine gave these parting reflections about her work.
Anytime you're in the forefront in the cannabis community, no matter what you're doing, you are the face of cannabis. And when you come into the industry and you're like nose holds barred, just out there in a negative manner, is going to negatively reflect the whole industry. So do it in love and light, guys.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Judy Williams in Tulsa.
In this story, Peyton Williams looks at the history of one of the state's surviving all-Black towns and the people carrying on the stories of its past and present.
Oklahoma has more historically Black towns than any other state in the Union. There were 50 founded in the state from Reconstruction in the 1870s to statehood in 1907, of which 13 survive today. And of those 13, Tatum's in Carter County is the only one in the southwestern part of the state. It's 115 miles away from Langston, the only other historically Black town in the western part of Oklahoma. There are several figures central to the migration of African Americans to Indian Territory, perhaps none more so than Edward McCabe, a land agent from Kansas and the first African American in the central U.S. to hold a political office. McCabe toured the United States to pitch the idea of starting towns in Indian Territory to recently freed African Americans, with the ultimate goal of eventually making Oklahoma the first all-Black state. He was also the founder of Langston, Oklahoma, and one of the founders of the Oklahoma Colored Agricultural and Normal University, now Langston University, the westernmost historically Black college in the country. McCabe's message sparked significant interest, especially in the recently freed African Americans in the southern United States. Oklahoma professor and doctoral candidate Edith Ritt Coulter, who is currently working on an oral history of Oklahoma's historically Black towns, explains some of the factors that moved African Americans to start their own towns in Oklahoma.
1877, Reconstruction's ending. The Freedmen's Bureau was shut down 1872. Jim Crow was baring its ugly teeth and reestablishing the racial hierarchy. And members of the Black community are looking for space, for autonomy, for self-governance.
One man who was convinced to make a new life for himself in the Indian Territory was Lee B. Tatum's. Tatum's was born on a plantation in Arkansas and moved from there to the territory with his family in the 1890s with the intention of founding a community that would be self-sufficient and escape from the racism of his home state. He camped along the banks of Wild Horse Creek in 1894 and, surveying the spot with his family, quickly decided it would be a good place for his planned township. Tatum spread the word about his town largely by touring and promoting it himself in the early days, and the early promotional material placed heavy emphasis on his plan that the community be entirely self-sufficient, or as close to it as possible. An advertisement for the town warned, quote, "Do not come to this country unless you are prepared to support yourself and family until such time as you can raise a crop." The emphasis on self-sufficiency in Tatum's worked. Within 15 years of its founding, Tatum's was a fully fledged town with a post office, general store, 2 churches, cotton gins, a blacksmith shop, and several farmers of various food crops and livestock. There was little need for community members to venture into nearby larger towns such as Ardmore and Healton. Of particular importance in Tatum's, as with all of the historically Black towns in Oklahoma, was the founding of a school. The schools in historically Black towns were a major point of pride for community members. Jennifer Williams, who was born in Tatum's and now lives in nearby Duncan, attended school in Tatum's until the school was closed in 1968 while she was in the 6th grade. She expressed pride in the education she received in Tatum's before being integrated into the nearby Fox school system.
We had good teachers. We had all Black teachers who had graduated from other places that had came in. We had all black teachers who had degrees and stuff, and they were just as good as Fox teachers.
Building a school in the all-black communities of Oklahoma was essential to the success of the towns in the eyes of many of their founders. Students would be attacked by angry whites and members of the Ku Klux Klan for attending segregated schools, but in the black towns, any racial violence from white Oklahomans was rare, and Ku Klux Klan violence was near non-existent, according to historical accounts. This left students free to attend school more regularly and was a key cause for Oklahoma's high African American literacy rate. Between 1900 and 1910, according to the United States Census, the national average fluctuated between 66 and 79%, while the average in Oklahoma ranged from 80 to 87%. Jennifer Williams said that the early days of integration in Fox were hard for students from Tatum's, who now had to deal with racism in a more direct way.
It was a big community of us in school, and like you said, just like a regular grade school. And then we went to Fox, you had your, that's when they started integrating us. So, you had your difficulties and, with race issues. But, as kids,
After the closure of the Tatum's school, the town began a slow decline, with various businesses closing throughout the following decades. Jennifer Williams still visits Tatum's once a month to take her 90-year-old mother shopping. There are no stores in Tatum's today, and no more storefront businesses of any kind, though some residents still maintain small farms. While there are no more businesses in Tatum's, the town still has a population of about 200 people, mostly retirees. Edith Ritt Coulter talked about what she thinks keeps the remaining 13 historically black towns from disappearing.
I think the ones that have maintained, the 13 that have maintained, I think it's just pure passion and grit and a love for these communities that have kept it going.
For Focus, Black Oklahoma, I'm Peyton Williams in Lawton.
You're listening to Focus, Black Oklahoma. Next, we catch up with Devin Williams at the premiere of the new Native American-led cable and streaming show, Reservation Dogs.
My great-grandma, Izora Bruner, I remember her talking about the Trail of Tears and how her grandma would talk about babies that were killed on the Trail of Tears because they wouldn't stop crying. And that's not fake, that's real. Like, we all came from that. Like, we're all here because our people fought and they survived for us to be here. And we were born in a state of rebellion. We were born in a way that, like, we fought to be here. And I will never forget that the reason that I'm here is because people fought for me to be here. I have a TV show and that's insane, but I wouldn't be alive without the people that fought for me to be here. And I appreciate that.
Where do you expect the premiere for FX's new groundbreaking TV series to be? Los Angeles, New York, Miami, or Tulsa's very own River Spirit Casino? If you said the River Spirit Casino in Tulsa, pat yourself on the back. Reservation Dogs is co-created by Taika Waititi, produced by FX, and created by Sterling Harjo. Reservation Dogs centers around 4 teenagers who live on a reservation in eastern Oklahoma. Much like the content of the show, the premiere is by Indigenous people for Indigenous people. The show is more than entertainment. It is a cultural experience, says FX Communications Chief John Solberg.
I hope this is a show that goes on for many years because I want to follow these kids' stories. I want to see where they go. I feel like I was a fly on the wall who was just in there watching these kids grow up. I didn't feel like I was watching an actor or a stage production. It's just really, it's just an amazing slice of life that I've never seen before on television, and I think many people will feel the same way.
The excitement and appreciation are palpable in the theater. There are hundreds of citizens of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Many dress in vivid traditional garments with bold shades of red, yellow, black, green, white, and tribal symbols. Dozens of clans and tribes have come to finally see themselves represented on screen. Reservation Dogs is filmed on location on the Muskogee Creek Reservation. A majority of the premiere's attendees grew up or live there today. They cheer as they see their home, family, friends, and streets represented with authenticity. You can hear people whispering about how they shop at a certain store or used to live in a house that's shown on a panoramic shot. It feels less like watching a TV show and more like we are watching home movies with friends. Claudia McHenry, Miss Muskogee Creek Nation 2021, shares what she feels after watching the first 2 episodes after the premiere.
I was able to see myself with them interacting in the way that they did, like laughter and the jokes and just endless, just the way that they interacted, that's truly how I see myself and my family. And so it was like a really good feeling.
The most energized people in the building are the young cast. They sign autographs, take selfies, and give interviews. One thing is clear to the cast. This isn't merely a role. It's an honor to portray their fellow Indigenous people in a way that is stereotype-defying and delightful to the people they represent. Paulina Alexis, who portrays Willie Jack and is a member of the Stoney Nakoda Nation, expresses her love for the series.
Native representation and how it's funny, and we show real things.
Devry Jacobs is a Canadian actor who portrays Elora Danan and is a member of the Mohawk Nation. She shares how transformative working in Oklahoma has been for her.
I think coming to Oklahoma for the first time, coming from Canada, I painted the South with one brush, and I had an idea of what Oklahoma would be like, which actually turned out to be really different from how it was. There is a huge history, a dark history between Black Wall Street and the Tulsa Massacre and the Trail of Tears and the Osage murders. And while there's a lot of dark history, there's also so much beauty that I had no idea was had here. And I've found that Indigenous folks and Black folks and brown folks have been so welcoming and embracing of this story and of us coming from different places, and also just made me feel like family, and will like cook us food and would just like laugh about everything and are just like so incredibly resilient. So I feel really grateful to have been a part of this project and also just to get to know this part of the world.
From the hearts and minds of Sterling Harjo and Company to the silver screen, the Reservation Dogs premiere was a historical event by members of a thriving culture determined to do their people both past and present justice. DeFaro Wanatai is also Canadian. He portrays Bear, the series lead, and is a member of the OG Cree Nation. DeFaro hopes the series contextualizes the Native experience for non-Native audiences.
How normal Native people are, and how funny we are, and how like our comedy ranges from like dark comedy and a sense of goofy. You know what I mean? It's all over, right? Another thing is like how the similarities between our different communities, even though we're thousands of miles apart and have completely different histories of Trail of Tears, of dealing with other issues up north. We all have very similarities, and we're all like still one, right? One nation.
For Focus Black Oklahoma, I am Devin Williams on the Res.
Finally, we explore the awkward starts and stops of connecting with family during this odd stage of the continuing pandemic. Sandra Slade has the story.
I ain't your little friend. How many times have you heard that from your mom? I know I've heard that several hundred times from my mother. My daughter, she captured a picture of my mother and I laughing. I thought it was beautiful and I posted it to Facebook. Totally harmless, right? Well, when one of her fellow teacher friends told her about the picture, my mother immediately informed me that I didn't ask for permission to post her picture and that I should take it down. I showed my mom I took it off of Facebook, but I also blocked her friend. Fast forward to the beginning of 2020, and for some reason, my youngest sister thought it was a great idea to sign our mom up for a Facebook account. Apparently, she had forgotten about the picture fiasco, or it was some sort of revenge for something I did to her as a child. She said it was for her to help her keep up with the family that wasn't in town. You're right. But for whatever reason, my little sister decided to sign mom up for an account. And one day, I saw it. There was a Facebook friend request from my mom. I couldn't believe it, so I called her to verify. I swear I could hear my younger sister laughing in the background when I kept asking my mom, "Why did you want a Facebook account?" She said, she was retired and she had time on her hands. That was cringeworthy itself. Also, one of her fellow teacher friends told her she was missing out. When she named the friend, I rolled my eyes as I knew her as a head gossiper that I had blocked. Then I got a notification of her being on house party. What? Why? I felt like I was being hacked or punked. A couple of days passed and the friend request sat there glaring at me, waiting on me. Do I accept it? Do I delete it? Or ignore it? Well, my mom hadn't brought it up and I wasn't going to walk into that landmine. My mom and I, we're like peanut butter and essential oil. They both look smooth, but together, it's not going to work. Having her only grandkids is the only reason we really tolerate each other. As soon as I thought I had escaped it, my aunt sent one of those long mass texts. She wanted to have the entire family use the house party app to eat dinner once a week. I sat in horror, not just because of the mass text, but hoping my mom would be too busy watching Judge Judy. But oh no, thanks to the pandemic, now she has extra time on her hands. And not only read it, but sent my sisters and my kids another mass text asking someone to come over and put, not download, as this was still a new term, the app on her phone, and she would buy them dinner, which she knows is the quickest way to get anyone in our family to do something, offer them free food. I sat there waiting to see who would be the traitor, and it was my 14-year-old daughter first to reply. I'll be glad to help you, Gigi. Do you want to come over to the house or pick me up? I forgot to mention, my mother lives only 10 minutes from us, and during this pandemic has just happened to be in the neighborhood at least twice a week. With heart and high five emojis taught to her by my traitor daughter, my mother replied, I'll pick you up after virtual school is over. Promptly at 4:55, my mom is here, and I'm hiding behind my monitors, and she's asking me if I'm busy. I tell her no, but then I just yank my headset off. While we sat waiting on my daughter, my mom is fidgeting with her phone. She finally looks up and says, did you get my friend request? From where I'm sitting, I clearly see she has Facebook up, so there's no chance of getting around it. Reluctantly, I tell her, yeah. Then I tell her that myself and other people on my page may say some things that might be offensive to her, and I really don't want to hear her complain about it. You know, the old saying, birds of a feather hang together. And she listens. And then she says, I also learned I can ignore stuff, which I want to say, I did, but I know better. And there's silence. And I say, remember when we were kids and you used to say, you are not one of our little friends? As soon as I say it, I know I'm going to pay for this. Just then, my daughter comes out and my mother says, okay, I see, and they leave. My Facebook notification buzzes and I notice my mom's friend request is gone. Freedom. Later that day, I received one house party notification, then another one from my mom about ordering from Walmart, then another one telling me to go outside, and another one to get some sunshine. At that point, I just wanted to hide from my phone. I tell them, as soon as I get done cooking, I'll pay attention. An hour later, a house party notification that 6 members of my family are on house party, waiting for me to join. Ignore. I receive a text from my mom with the phone and shrug emoji. Are you going to join? I know I can't ignore this for long. I open it and then I realize in this pandemic, we have become our mother's little friends. My middle sister and I have not figured out how to pay back our little sister for helping mom get on Facebook. I'm sure we will find a way to exact a fair revenge. But right now, I gotta jump on this house party dinner meeting because tonight is Taco Tuesday and it's my turn to bring tortillas.
Focus Black Oklahoma is produced in partnership with KOSU Radio, Tulsa Artist Fellowship, and Tri-City Collective. Additional support is provided by the George Kaiser Family Foundation and the Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Philanthropies. Our theme music is by Moffett Music. Focus Black Oklahoma's executive producers are Quraish Ali Lansana and Bracken Clark. Our associate producers are Nick Alexandrov and Vanessa Gaona. Visit us online at kosu.org, tricitycollective.com/Focus Black Oklahoma. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Focus Black OK. You can hear Focus Black Oklahoma on demand for free at kosu.org. FBO is also available online at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, NPR One, NPR.org, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please download and subscribe.